So today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the connections between tourism and culture. Experiencing different cultures is a common travel motivator, but what does culture entail and how does it relate to travel? In this lesson, we'll begin to explore this topic. And in doing so, we'll try to address the following questions. First, what is culture? How does culture relate to travel? And finally, how can we categorize different types of cultural experiences? Now, when we as geographers talk about culture, we're referring to the various characteristics of life that are shared by a group of people. And often when we talk about culture, we're talking about a particular community or nation. So we often talk about culture in the big picture. What does a group of people who live in a country or a specific region, what do those things that they have in common, what does that say about those people? So it could be things like language or religion or the foods that they eat. But it could also be at a much smaller scale. It could even just be common interests that a small niche group have within a community. Now, according to the dictionary, culture is the total range of activities and ideas of a group of people with shared traditions, which are transmitted and reinforced by members of the group. These are artistic and social pursuits, expression, and tastes valued by a society or class, as in the arts, manners, dress, etc. And in your everyday life, you are practicing culture whether you recognize it or not. The food that you eat, the things you learn in school, the language you speak, the kinds of jobs you might look to have in the future, these are all aspects of culture. And depending on where you are, where you live, where you grew up, these things are going to be slightly different. Now, in terms of travel, culture can open up a number of avenues. One might be interested in learning about the ways in which everyday life is different for people in other areas of the world. One might be interested in learning more about the culture of indigenous peoples in their area. One might want to experience new foods or cuisines of the local communities that they visit. One might be interested in learning about the history of the place and the people that live there. One might be interested in learning more about local customs and dress. One might be interested in learning about sports or just watching sports that they're interested in. Or finally, one might be interested in learning about the significance of religious sites. And through this, we can appreciate the cultures of different areas. And as you can see on this chart here, the different areas that we could look at in terms of culture to learn about a particular place. And by experiencing these through travel, hopefully we can come to understand other cultures and other peoples in a deeper level than we did otherwise. And the challenge of cultural tourism is getting beyond sort of superficial observations that we see of other cultures and trying to actually understand the way that other people live and not just observing them in a stereotypical way. So cultural travel is travel that focuses on learning about different cultures in a variety of different ways. And many people travel to experience cultures that are different than their own. On the flip side, geography can also have an impact on cultural development. So sometimes a culture is isolated from other cultures owing to their geographic location. So for example, some people might be isolated because they live in a rural mountain area, as the peoples of Bolivia had been for many years. Another culture may be situated so that people have frequent contact with those of other cultures. So depending on where you live, your culture may have been influenced by travelers for a long time, or perhaps certain groups of people never interacted with travelers, and that's going to have an impact on culture. Cultural transmission is something that's always going on as well. Cultures do not exist in a vacuum. They're always pollinating each other in different ways. So coming to understand why they do and appreciating why they do and respecting why they do and how they do is an important aspect of culture that we have to appreciate when we travel. And we think back to this idea of the grand tour, we'll remember that cultural tourism is not a recent phenomenon. Remember in the 18th century, the European aristocrats would take a grand tour of Europe to enrich their minds with knowledge. And in essence, what these people were doing was engaging in cultural tourism. They wanted to learn more about the cultures of the continent. So these travelers visited art galleries, historic sites, they attended lectures and concerts, all in the pursuit of learning more about other peoples and learning more about cultures throughout Europe. However, remember, these were just a privileged few who were able to do it because back in those days you needed a lot of money to travel. This was only available to a select few people. It's not the same today. Now, most people have the opportunity to travel to different areas of the world to experience culture if they so choose. Now, even within cultures, there are different ways of being aware of and appreciating culture. So to finish off the lesson here, we're going to look at three ways of categorizing culture. First here is what we call high culture. So high culture are aspects of culture that include activities such as the opera, ballet, and theater. So these are sort of high elitist aspects of culture. They can be interpreted as being elitist or inaccessible to most people. Some people see them as needing special knowledge or skills to appreciate. So even though anyone might be able to walk into an art gallery, not everyone's going to want to appreciate the subtleties of art. Not everyone's going to appreciate the subtleties of ballet. Not everyone's going to appreciate Shakespearean theater. But they do tell us something about a place, about a culture, and about their history. Our second type, which we're probably more familiar with, is pop culture, which, although it's maybe not as elitist, can still give us a very valuable and in many ways a more valuable insight into what a culture values and appreciates. So pop culture is current cultural practices and activities of the society's general public. And it's exactly what it is, the most popular things. So examples would include popular music, TV shows, or the latest fashion fads. But culture does not have to only be for the masses. We could also look at it on a more granular level. So this would be the idea of subcultures. Subcultures are specialized niche cultures that focus on a specific aspect of one's culture or identity. So this is a common thing that people from maybe they're not these people aren't connected by geography or any other aspects of their culture, but they have this one interest that they all have in common. So this could be things such as gamers, comic book fans, hipsters, foodies. They have something in common and they're signaling to others that they belong to this group. And so this could be a motivator for travel, to be a part of this subculture, to be with people who have similar interests to you. So in this lesson, you learned that culture is all of the aspects of life that are shared by a group of people who are bound by geography, language, heritage, religion, or interests. Cultural tourism is the act of traveling to experience cultures other than your own. And culture can take a number of forms, including high culture, pop culture, and subcultures.